Good morning, John Masterson here, and you're very welcome to KCLR Live for a very, very special day for KCLR and for Carlow Kilkenny, because this day next week you will be out doing something very important for every citizen to do, which is to cast your vote. It's also, Ken, we're surrounded by cameras here. Ken McGuire, this is being streamed on KCLR96fm.com, which I think might be the first time that we've done something like this. So if any of you are sitting beside your laptop or your computer, you can have a look at this as well as have a listen to it. And TG Carr, Tomas, cameraman, is here. You're very, very welcome, Tomas. And this will be shown on TG Carr. It's an important day, and it's an important week for Kilkenny. The last stage of an election campaign to fill the seat that was vacated by Phil Hogan from Fine Gael, who held it and is now gone to Europe to be our commissioner. It's also an important day for people to think about two referenda which are coming up. And just to remind people, and we'll be coming to this at the end of the programme, the wording proposes to amend the Constitution by inserting a new section stating marriage may be contracted in accordance with law by two persons without distinction as to their sex. And the second referendum question, every citizen who has reached the age of 21 years is eligible for election to the office of President. 13 candidates are fighting for this seat in Carlow Kilkenny. One of them, Bobby Aylward, has been in the Dáil before. I think he's the only one who has been. Bobby was there for one term prior to the last election and has also served on the council. 6 others are current councillors in Carlow and Kilkenny, and they are Malcolm Noonan, David Fitzgerald, Kathleen Function, Patrick McKee, who started as Fianna Fáil and is now with Renua, Breda Gardner of Independent, and Willie Quinn, who is with Labour. We have 6 other people who are with us here. There's 1 or 2 actually on their way here, and we'll step in a minute. Adrian Wallace, representing People Before Profit, Noel G. Walsh, who is Independent, Davy Houlihan, Independent Republican, Peter O'Loughlin, the Independent Identity Ireland Party, Elizabeth Harrahan, National Citizens Movement, and Conor McLean of the Anti-Austerity Alliance. And you're all very, very welcome. We have 2 hours, there will be plenty of time. Our aim is to give everyone a fair chance at the microphone, and Emer is there in the background to make sure that this all happens like that. But if it doesn't, Emer has a weapon. Emer, have you got a sound you want to play for me there, Emer? If anyone gets very out of line, and by very out of line, I mean that they're destroying it for the listeners, because this is for the listeners. If they're destroying it for the listeners, Emer is going to sound that sound, and just think of a football match and think of a yellow card. You're not going to be sent away. There it is again. Emer, it strikes terror in me. I haven't done anything wrong yet. I'm just afraid I'm going to be thrown out for 10 minutes. People will be thrown out and they will be escorted out until they have decided to enter the debate in a spirit of trying to sort out who is the best candidate who can support the people of Carlow and Kilkenny in this constituency. Now, the first thing I said I'm going to do with everybody is in 3 words, and I mean 3 words, to say what are the big things that you are going to focus on for the people of Carlow Kilkenny if you are elected. First of all, for the Green Party, Malcolm Noonan.
Economy, ecology and society.
For People Before Profit, Adrian Wallace.
Grassroots democracy, Irish water and positive progress.
For Fine Gael, David Fitzgerald.
Jobs, tax cuts, housing and leadership.
Independent, Noel G. Walsh.
HSE, unemployment and housing.
For Sinn Féin, Kathleen Function.
Housing, the economy and the pressures facing working families.
For Renua, Patrick McKee.
Reduce taxation, job creation and supporting SMEs, protecting the elderly and the disabled.
Davy Houlihan is not with us yet, but I'm sure he will be shortly. Independent Identity Ireland, Peter O'Loughlin, please.
Industry, migration and wealth creation.
For Fianna Fáil, Bobby Aylward.
Jobs, housing and health.
Breda Gardner will be with us, I believe, shortly. National Citizens Movement, Elizabeth Harrahan.
Accountability, transparency, stop privatisation and focus on health and housing.
And you're very welcome. Breda's just joining us now. For Labour, Willie Quinn.
Jobs, housing and education.
And for the Anti-Austerity Alliance, Conor McLean.
The housing crisis, the need for real jobs and the defeat of the water charges.
Breda, you're very welcome. I'm just to throw this at you straight away. The 3 words that you would focus on if you were elected to fill this seat.
A fairer system and a fairer health service.
That's 3 words gone.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Now, our reporter Marianne Vaughan has been out and about. She's been in Carlow and she's been in Castlecomer and she's been in Bagnallstown and she's been in Kilkenny City. She's been all over the place, and here's how she got on.
question would be to the people at large that are involved in the local area, in the political area, would be to put the money eventually into the ring road, to take the heavy volume of vehicles that's.
I still don't know which way I'm going.
And do you think it's something that people do put a lot of thought into?
I do, yeah, I do. Because even my fellow mows my grass today, he had an opinion. He's about 70, like, so they do, yeah.
And what would be your main concerns if you were talking to the candidates, I suppose?
You know, really, I don't need them anymore, and I will support, you know, vote, whatever. But really, I don't look for anything off them. They take my tax, they do everything they're supposed to do, and you know, you get on with life. You pay your water rates and you pay your. What more can I say to you? So what's the point in fighting anyone? Like, I mean, get on with it.
And can you name any of the other 4 TDs, just out of interest is all?
What are their names? There's two of them now that I have seen up on posters that I go, I wonder who they are.
I have, and I have decided who to vote for. I would say that older people and people of my generation would put a lot of thought, but I doubt very much if younger people are interested.
I don't know about the local election. I suppose I'm more interested in the referendum issue. That's a big issue for me, but I have to think about it. I always vote, so I will be thinking, but I'm not familiar with the candidates.
They're all the same. They promise you the sun, moon and stars, and with the Gehenna and nothing. You know?
And do you think it's something people do put much thought into?
I don't think so, not nowadays. I think people knows what the TDs are really all about, you know.
And just out of interest, can you name any of the other 4 TDs that we have already? I mean, do you think people see much of them?
I don't think I know what their names are. I just go by and that's it, like, you know.
Will you be voting yourself on them?
I probably will, yeah.
And if you could ask them one question, the candidates for the by-election, if you could ask them one question, what would it be?
I shouldn't really ask them anything. There's no point really anymore. I would have thought in it, and I would like the candidate, the best candidate to do the job. You know, that the policies that they would pursue would be positive enough for the public and of benefit to the people. Because sometimes they make promises and then they backtrack on them, and for whatever reason it happens, and then we believe in them, and then occasionally we find differently. But I would hope whoever gets the job will do it right and fill that seat and do it with honour.
And is there anything in particular you think they could do for Carlow Kilkenny, or that you would like to see done for Carlow Kilkenny?
Well, I would like to see, I suppose, on the jobs front is one part of it, and on the other part of it is that the money that they will spend will be utilised to the maximum to benefit everybody.
I haven't. No, I haven't had a chance, and you haven't. But I will do so, yeah.
Do you think it is an issue of importance to people who are next to our 5th TD is?
I think it is, but yes, there's been an awful lot of focus on the referendum, hasn't there? Yeah, which probably has taken away from debate on that. Yes, it is important. It's very important that we in a democratic society that we vote.
Do you think there is a need for a 5th TD? Do you think there should be one TD per constituency, or do you think the representation is needed?
I think the representation is needed, yes. I think that there's definitely merit in that, yeah.
Can you name any of the other 4 TDs that we already have in the constituency?
Yeah, the other 4.
Yeah.
We have John McGuinness as well. Or the guy down in the Penny Hill chap down, Pateering down in Carlow. And oh the Lord. The neighbour lady, that's her name. And feeling it. That's the 3 of them.
I don't even know what's wrong with it. Is that terrible? I'm not thinking the real word at all. I don't know. I don't know if it makes any difference who gets in, but the way everything is really and truly.
Is that a bit disillusioned?
I am very disillusioned by all of them. But I mean, there is such an awful divide. You look at their pensions, they don't live in the world we live in. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think they can understand. Do you know what I mean? They don't have to pay anything. You know, everything's paid from their phones, everything. I know that they're doing a job, but they're paying other people to do their job, aren't they? And you look at this town, there's nothing in it. You know, there is absolutely nothing in this town, only cars. There isn't, there's only one shop in it there, and that's all it's in. There's no work. And if you have children here, it's nothing for them. I just go down and sit in the pub, which is terrible, isn't it?
And that was Marianne Vaughan out around the constituency. Davy Hoolan has joined. You're very, very welcome, Davy. And a couple of things there that come out. Disillusionment. promises being made and not being kept, that they live in a different world. For politicians, hard things to answer. Maybe we should put those things first of all to the government parties. I can open up first. Willie Quinn, what's your reaction to that? That woman, there's nothing in Bagnall.
I suppose, in fairness, Carlow has been badly hit over the last number of years. We have, and Carlow SF has been lost with LeBron. There was 2,000 jobs in Braun.
But what would you do? That's the past.
What we do, I said jobs as my number one priority as regards Carlow, and like I said, the whole thing is to make sure the IDA interested in Carlow Kilkenny. The IDA, I think, over the last number of years has only paid about 3 visits to Carlow, and I think about 4 to Kilkenny, which is crazy. We're right beside the motorway. We're within an hour from Dublin. We're in an hour from Watford Port. We're in an hour from West Airport.
The Labour Party are in government. Why aren't they doing that?
The Labour Party were in government, John, for the last 4 years. The first 3 years was getting the country back. We had to get the bank sorted first, which we have done.
That was one of the jobs.
That was one of the jobs, yeah. We're after creating 90,000 jobs. There's 90,000 people less on the labour list than what was on it. The percentage of people on the unemployment is 10% in Carlow and 13% in Kilkenny. That's coming down, but we need to do more. Look, this is not a quick fix. We have to get more jobs. We have to make sure that there is more jobs. MSD and Carlow are providing 11.4 million in investment over the next 2 years to create more jobs.
David Fitzgerald, you're the major party in government. If you were to join, what can you do? What do you do to that woman in Bagnallstown who really feels there's nothing but cars in the place?
Well, if you listen to good morning, John. If you listen to the Vox Pop, the first thing one of your speakers said was the choice for people is who is the best candidate for the job, and that's the key. The key is who can actually bring the message of Carlow Kilkenny into the heart of government.
How do you think you could?
Well, I represent a government party. I can actually talk to those who make decisions and bring investment into this community, and we've seen that. And the key, after these years of austerity and these difficult years, and we have to acknowledge that people have gone through, all of us, families have gone through very, very difficult years. That
the future, David, the future.
That people need positivity, and they need solutions, and that's what I believe I bring to the table in this campaign.
Adrian Wallace?
I'm a Carlow candidate as well, and I think this is very important because we actually need to strengthen the ties between Carlow and Kilkenny. We have the potential here to be one of the tourist capitals in Ireland. We have great resources, we have a great rural Ireland that tourists love to come in and see. First thing I would do, I would go down to that lady in Bagnallstown and ask her what she feels is best. None of this, I'll represent you. The people
But you should
know
be
their
telling her
lives.
what's best. The people are looking for somebody who is going to provide leadership.
But the leadership comes from the bottom. They live their lives. We got an awful lot there that people are removed from our realities, that the politicians are, and that's actually a fact, and it's true. The people know what's best. They pass that message on to me. I'm
Bobby
not here to
Aylward,
make decisions for
you've
others.
been there. People are removed from the politicians, and that was very clear in that piece.
Well, I don't accept I'm removed. When I was beaten 11 years, or in 2011, I had to go back to an ordinary farmer, and I have a small to medium-sized farm, and I had to go back to reality and make a living out of that, so I'm removed.
When you say, Bobby, you had to go back to reality, are you suggesting that isn't reality?
Well, the question was that politicians are not aware of what's happening on the ground. I'm just saying I would.
It's a widely held perception, Bobby.
Well, the question was asked, what's in investment? What we need is investment, and that's what we need. We need investment. We need, as has been said, the IDA, Enterprise Ireland, joint up thinking here to get inward investment into Carlow Kilkenny. What's happening here is everything is happening in Dublin, and a two-tier recovery. Nothing happening in the regions, nothing happening in Carlow Kilkenny. And we didn't need investment. We need to get leader moving again. Leaders, this government is talking about joining leader in with under the
Bobby,
councils.
I'll come back to that, and I'll come back
But that's
to
investment
everybody.
we need. That's what we need to get the country moving.
Throughout the programme, we're going to pepper in listeners' questions, and I have another listener's question coming up here now, and when it's played now, it's a short one, it's about, and I'm going to come to Kathleen Function to respond to that, and then to Malcolm, and then to Patrick.
If you could ask the candidate one question then, what would you ask them?
And I suppose unemployment would be the big thing, to see what they can get to Kilkenny. And of course the other thing is housing. There are an awful lot of young people now who are getting married, and they just can't afford housing the way the situation is.
Kathleen, your response.
Thanks, John. Yeah, there are two of the biggest issues in the constituency. Housing is a major issue with the amount of people in the emergency accommodation and a huge amount of people who are staying in overcrowded conditions with families, sleeping in sitting rooms, things like that with kids. I suppose one of the plans that we want to do in relation to housing is to take money from the Ireland Strategic Investment Fund to help to build social housing, because not only are you helping solve the housing crisis, but you are also creating employment, which is a major issue, creating employment for the construction sector. But there, in relation to time, there's a number of measures we need to look at as well. I mean, for example, we need to lift the embargo on nurses and teachers. There's a shortage of nurses and teachers. That's another big issue.
And we'll be coming back to where the money comes from. Malcolm briefly, I want to get Malcolm and Patrick before we go to a break.
Yeah, by far the largest employers in Carlow Kilkenny and throughout the country are SMEs, and one thing that we would focus on is changing procurement guidelines. And public authorities are large purchasers of goods and services, and by changing procurement guidelines to favour local contractors and suppliers, we can talk about the last issue about regenerating our urban town and village centres by getting people back living in the town centres. A lot of dereliction in these places that could be regenerated through living above the shop schemes that we're confident in the cities initiative. Therefore, we're creating employment and attracting some chunk of the housing crisis by bringing people back to live in town centres and regenerate that issue that lady raised about being running cars in the towns. That can be addressed. I was in Bangladestown last night. It is a beautiful town, but it needs regeneration. And these are practical solutions that could be implemented.
Patrick McKee?
Yeah, I mean, there's what's coming through there from listening to the people contributing. There's a huge amount of cynicism. I can't blame them. The cronyism, the corruption and the self-interest that has been in Irish politics over the last number of decades. It's not surprising that people are very cynical. The government have...
What would you do about it?
Well, the government have taken a slash and burn policy in relation to rural Ireland. What we have to do is we have to come away from the over-reliance on the IDA and inward investment, and we need to recognise that in order to have a sustainable recovery, we have to support our SMEs, our family businesses, who have become nothing more than glorified tax collectors for the government. And we have to ensure that semi-states and government put the structures in place to allow rural Ireland do it for themselves, do what they do best, and that's build their communities and build jobs. We have to end the tax discrimination that exists, that the self-employed are paying 5 times more in income tax and charges than other workers. That's the step.
Thank you, Patrick. Now, we've got off to a good start. We have 8 of our speakers and we have 13 people here. And you're welcome back to our election debate where we have all 13 candidates for the Carlow Kilkenny By-Election here in the studio with us until 12 o'clock. And then we have plenty of time for everyone to talk. Emer, the listeners have been texting in their hordes, and these are the ones that I think are coming from genuine people. They're not party texts. Can you read us a number?
In as far as we can ascertain vetting quickly here, we have texts, calls, emails. Caller Catherine says it doesn't matter whether Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael or Labour get elected, they'll have to toe the party line anyway once they're in the Dáil. On the referendum on presidential age, she says it's a joke that a 21-year-old can be made president for 7 years, then they get a full pension for life when the government is taking medical cards from children with cancer. She says the same-sex marriage referendum, the equality marriage referendum, that is, she says, is a total joke. On the text machine, somebody's asking, where can we watch the by-election debate live? Yes, you can watch it. We're streaming it right now on KCLR96fm.com/TV. A texter says Ballyhale has no shop, no post office, no petrol station. Another texter insisting that we don't lose Kilqueen Hospital. Somebody else saying, how do we get shops reopened on the High Street in Kilkenny and on Tulla Street in Carlow, that there's so many empty spaces. And she wants the election candidates to address parking charges as well, and the need to encourage shopping back into the city centres and towns dying a death.
Lots of people out there texting us. Thank you, Emer, on 0833069696, and we try and bring you those a couple of times during the programme. Now, Mary-Ann Vaughan, as I said, has been out and about, and one of the things she did was she said to people, if you could talk to the candidates, what question would you ask? So let's go. I'm going to put this question first to Breda Gardner. A question from Mary-Ann Vaughan. Are we there? We're out of our studios, so some of these things.
And if the candidates were in front of you here, if you could put one question to them, what would it be?
Oh God, lots of times I know, don't confuse it. But really, what can they do? They can't do anything on their own. And you see, there's a group, and they all back one another, even if they hate one another. Who wants to pay all these things? But we have to. And if you don't, you double it then, because they're going to get it out of you one way or the other.
Breda Gardner, person directly to you, perhaps you can't do anything on your own. You're not a member of a big political party.
Well, I don't think, John, that anybody can do anything on their own. One of my manifestos says to work with TDs to do the right thing. You heard your listeners say there how disillusioned they actually are. We had a situation here during the summer where 10,000 people wanted the ring road finished, and Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael did not listen to the people. They did not grant them a review. Let me ask the chief parties here today, if they had a decision to make between their constituents or the whip is going in the opposite direction, which way would they turn? I want them to answer this question, because I am for
Well,
the
we'll
people.
put that to them later. Elizabeth, how would you feel about the same thing, Elizabeth Harahan? You would be a lone voice. Were you elected? Is that fair?
Look, you can talk whatever you like about policy, John. The system is broken, the political system is broken, and you can understand the anger out there on the streets. What I'm getting is, you vote somebody in a party whip system, and the whip actually takes over democracy. It has destroyed democracy. We elected a Fianna Fáil or Fianna Gael Labour government in, and they promised political reform. And what did they give us? A referendum on the age of presidency being reduced from 35 to 21. Now, how in God's name is that going to affect anybody? We wanted initiated referendums that gives the power back to the people. We still have no system in place to stop the banking crisis that happened here in 2008, 2009.
Conor McLean, you do have representation up there. You do have.
We do indeed, and I think that it has been very effective for a small number of TDs. They've been in the headlines a lot, and part of the reason is because they're actually assisting movements from below in getting the voices heard. So whether it's on the issue of housing, of a crisis in relation to joblessness, or it's to do with the water charges and the effects of it. Our TDs, Paul Murphy and Ruth Coppinger and Joe Higgins, have gotten the word out there. We've had Tweedledum and Tweedledee governments, and another suit from one of these parties isn't going to cut it here in Carlow Kilkenny. We need real opposition, and that's what the
water charges is something that we'll come back to very much after 11 o'clock. Noel, you want? You got back in front there, yes.
Wasn't it the independents that brought the penalty point system to light? Wasn't it the independent TD in Kildare, Catherine Murphy, that brought up the issues about Irish water? So they're not disillusioned with independent candidates or the smaller parties. It's the independent and smaller candidates that are on the street working for the people. It's Labour, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that are not in touch with the people.
And we have two more independents here who might like to speak on this. Can I come to Davy Houlihan, please?
You've asked both the Labour and the Fine Gael people what they would do. Surely they've been in power for the last number of years. What have they done?
We will ask them that, and I think we already have had some of that discussion with Peter and with Willie. And finally, Peter O'Loughlin, and then we'll have heard all the voices around the table, which is our first target reached.
I think Catherine Murphy has already proven that independents can do quite a bit. In fact, while I'm not independent, I am part of a party.
What is your party, Peter? How many members has it?
It was founded around 6 months ago in last October. It has roughly 100. We're growing all the time, but these things do take time. I think it's the information, the freedom that especially either independent or newer voices can bring. For example, on the issues we're speaking about there, the major issue with Ireland is that our domestic economy is far too weak to support our society. That's the single main issue in relation to the economy. There is really, every single issue is born out of that, whether it's health or whether it's lack of social housing. We simply don't make enough money. And without building up that structure from the foundation, unless that foundation is built up.
Building the economy, and that is something that I'm sure will be discussed quite extensively in the next hour and a half. I'm going to take a short change from the election manifesto, because one of the fixtures in KCLR Live every morning is the bingo. And there was one winner in yesterday's game of Radio Bingo. The winning book was bought in News Plus Extra here in Street Kilkenny. Today you are playing for a prize of €200. So that panel, local 1890 200 099 before 9 o'clock tonight to claim your prize. And next week's jackpot is €9,000.
Radio Bingo. Today it's Yellow Page with 20. The
John,
numbers are
John,
1 and 4,
do you have a second?
14.
Do you have a second?
18. This is KCLR Live.
Welcome back. Tony lives in North Kilkenny. He's been married for 40 years. He thinks it's an abomination that two people of the same sex should be allowed to marry, and that the government should be concerned with more urgent things from that. Paddy is listening in from Dublin, watched Vincent Brown last night. He thinks one of the ladies, or as he puts it, the fairer sex, would win Phil Hogan's seat. He thinks they're the only ones in touch with the difficulties the people of Ireland are facing today. Caller wants to know what Bobby Aylward, Willie Quinn or David Fitzgerald would do for the old age pensioner if they get elected, because they've been ignored for the last 5 years. Let's do that. Bobby Aylward, what would you do for the old age pensioners?
Well, the first thing I would urge my party to do is to restore the services and restore the state taxes on the old age pensions that have been taken off them over the last 4 years. The average pensioner in this country has lost 15% of their income through state taxes.
But the country's broke.
No, well, it's all about priority again. It's not broke. It's all about priority.
Well, the country is still borrowing money on a daily basis.
Yes, but it's manageable. It's down to 3% of GDP now, and it's going to be 2018. Hopefully, we'll be on level par. That we will not be borrowing. So you have to set things back in place. But what I'm saying is that the pensioners of this country have suffered under this government. We have a track record of always looking after the pensions. We doubled the pensions when we had the opportunity in good times from 1999 to 2004.
I must put it to you under Budgie Hearn's government that you doubled an awful lot of things and we got into an awful mess.
But if the people if the pension hadn't been doubled when times were good from 1999 to 2004, where would the pensions have been in 2008 when the crash came? Only for that reason, we prepared when finances were there, we looked after them.
Willie Quinn, what would you do for the pensioners?
Yeah, certainly, like I said, the pensioners have lost over the last number of years, and like I said, we gave a small dividend back to them this year, but the money, as I said, the money wasn't there. We had to rebuild the country from scratch. When the good times was there was money thrown at everything left, right and centre. Some of it was very foolishly spent. But as regards the old age pensioners, certainly we got to give them a dividend back in the last budget, and this time we're going to increase that again, and hopefully over the next 3 or 4 years we're going to do the same.
There's an election coming very clearly. Patrick, sorry, can I go briefly to Peter Fitzgerald and then I'll come to
David
Adrian.
Fitzgerald.
David Fitzgerald, sorry.
There's a bit of an attempt going on here to try and lump Fine Gael and Labour in with Fianna Fáil, the PDs and the Greens. The reality...
for the past
20
years you've had control of the tiller.
The reality of it is that Bobby Aylward voted for 16 billion, not 16 million, 16 billion worth of cuts when he was in government. This government has taken a bankrupt country and to the point where we're now the fastest growing economy in Europe. We now have a surplus of 1.5 billion that we can actually start to return back to the people. And what you're going to see, Michael Noonan,
we have a surplus, but we're continuing to borrow.
Yes, we're on track. We're on track to hit our targets in 2018, which was always the target. But what we're about to do, Michael Noonan confirmed it here in Kilkenny only 10 days ago. We are going to start to roll back on some of those allowances that were taken away during the worst of the austerity years. But the listener has to understand that the reason we had austerity was because the country went bankrupt, and it went bankrupt because it was mismanaged by Fianna Fáil.
Adrian Wallace, people for profit, please.
Sorry, the true statement that I heard here today was from Willie, that when you went into government first you had the bank sorted, because you did sort out the banks at the expense of the people of this country. At the expense of the people in this country. No, you didn't.
No, this country only needs one bank. They could have nationalised it, sold off the rest, they were talking.
Would you prefer that we're talking about the elderly here in rural Ireland, okay? You can see already that they're trying to privatise the transport sector in this country. They're trying to privatise everything, but this transport I'm really interested in, because once you privatise the transport, you can say goodbye to the free travel. And you're talking about the elderly and people with disabilities being hurt again.
Conor McLean?
No.
Adrian, Conor McLean,
There's a lot of talk about the country being broke, but in fact there's a huge amount of wealth in the country that isn't being taxed. The economy is skewed vastly in favour of the super rich.
And the question was, what would you do for the old age pensioners? Is that where you'd be putting that money?
Well, it certainly would be, because I mean the old age pensioners, quite apart from the cuts in pensions and the increases in the cost of living, have been facing many obstacles. In particular, one of them would be the prescription charges, with many pensioners who are facing illness, and many bills would face at least €25 a month on the prescription charges. That has to be gotten rid of.
Elizabeth, I want to apologise, I called you Adrian there briefly. Patrick McLean?
Look, John, Renew Ireland is the only party that would have significant numbers, in my view, in this government. And what we will
Not in the current government. Patrick, if you're elected, you would be
and what we will ensure
on your time.
John, what we will ensure is that the economic recovery, the first people to benefit from the economic recovery will be the elderly, will be our most vulnerable, and will be the disability sector. The only way, John, the only way to ensure, sorry Elizabeth, and we get back to the Vince Brown style debate.
You said don't want to pay for
Elizabeth,
nothing,
then
you're paying your wages. And they're the very people that pay your
30
wages.
seconds to Patrick and then Elizabeth.
What we want to
Oh, we've heard it.
Yellow card.
Elizabeth, you're on the yellow card now.
That's fair enough, I'm used to that.
What we want to do is ensure that we have a sustainable recovery, based on supporting our SME sector and our indigenous business. We're going to start doing that in Carlow Kilkenny. And that the wealth created through supporting our SME sector is transferred to the squeezed middle, the working poor, also public sector workers who have borne a significant brunt over the last number of years.
The working poor are
also
important,
to
but the
ensure
unemployed more
that
so.
our elderly people get what they deserve, and that's a safe
thanks,
life.
John. I think what, just talking to people at the door, I would say to give back the elderly their phone allowance. They feel they're being taken, they really, really feel let down by this present government, and they want help as well.
How much was that phone allowance?
I don't know offhand it was, John, but a lot of people are saying, why are they
I think it was
taking...
€21.90 a month, which is a lot of money when
Yes,
you're on
it
welfare.
is.
They haven't the ability to earn any money. I mean, these are the people that have built this country.
They should
built
never,
the hospitals,
should never
built
hold
the hospitals, built the education system, and now they're being attacked because of the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Kathleen?
Yeah, it's true to say the elderly have suffered a lot from both this government and the previous Fianna Fáil government, because the reality is Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are two sides of the same coin. But like, there's a lot of issues around this. There's issues around pensioners, but cuts to home help services, cuts to the respite grant, issues around rural transport. That's a major issue in this constituency at the moment, because there's talks of cutting a lot of the bus services, and the people will be left completely isolated in rural Ireland. So what we need is policies in relation to restoring respite grant, restoring home help hours, and giving back to...
Respite grant and home help hours. Malcolm
And
Newland?
also, sorry, just to finish the point, John, because in relation to rural transport, that's a big issue, and rural Ireland in general, because like people who are in rural Ireland are suffering a lot because they feel completely isolated and cut off. So in terms of the post office services, Garda closure, Garda station
And Bagnallstown lost their post office recently, and we know about the Castlecomber bus that has been going on. Yeah. Okay, Malcolm Noonan, please.
Of rural Ireland, they're the issues that we need to be addressing.
Thank you, Kathleen. Malcolm?
Yeah, I agree with Kathleen. The government is not looking at the trends in population in the country in the next 20, 30 years. The older people in this country will go from a population percentage of 2% up to over 10% by 2050. And there's a major challenge ahead in how we provide services for dignity for older people into the future, independent living, issues around neuro rehabilitation services in the South East, chronic underinvestment in that regard. For people with Alzheimer's, stroke, epilepsy, and MS and Parkinson's disease.
Four final comments on old age pensions. I'm going to go to David, and then to Patrick, and then to Willie, and then to David Fitzgerald.
The kernel of the whole thing is that we paid off, the government paid off the bankrupt. If they had somebody who was in power, who was able to stand up and speak.
How, David? The Greeks are trying to stand up and they're getting laughed at.
Well, we should come out and support
They're being laughed at by our government as well.
Yeah.
When they try to give out food stamps to their people, they've been treated with disdain.
David, please.
The bankers, they paid off the bankers. We would not be in this discussion if they had not done that.
But we're looking at the future, not the past. It's done.
But we have to learn from those mistakes, really, don't we? And that's why we need new government.
John, we all agree, John, that
Patrick has the microphone.
And that the cutbacks to the disability sector and the cutbacks that affect our elderly citizens are completely unacceptable. But in order to be in a position to reverse those cuts, we have to ensure our economy grows.
It's like the big
recovery. Now, Sinn Féin, if they were elected, they're dismantling the economy in Northern Ireland and increasing unemployment and losing political support. If they're elected, they will send us into another recession with their tax policy. Fine Gael are closing down essentially Carlow Town with a discriminatory tax policy. What we need now is a party focused on enterprise, supporting enterprise, and overseeing a significant transfer of wealth away then to the squeezed middle and to the working poor.
But with the size of your party, you will have very little influence. And then I'm going to come to Willie and to David Fitzgerald.
Thanks, John. John, in 1997, Rory Creed was the first and only Labour Minister for Finance. He handed over the books to the incoming Charlie McCreevy, and we didn't do anything, we had money in the bank. Just to answer Elizabeth's question, Elizabeth said we bailed out the bankers. Yes, we bailed out the bankers, but we had no choice, because if we didn't get the banks right, if we didn't... Sorry,
that was not your money to spend in that manner. That was the people's money. They should have been confirmed.
If we didn't bail out, if we didn't get the country back on track, there would be no money to pay the nurses, the guards,
Never ever in the history of the state have we had the money to pay. We would not have the money to pay. We Minister for Finance, and what we had a woman Minister for Finance, we would never be in finance.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, I need to ask you just to step outside for 5 minutes and we'll bring you back
And,
in.
and Davy, you're pretty much on the margin.
We wouldn't
margin
have had the
as well.
money to pay the pensions of the old age pensioners. We wouldn't have had the money to pay for the nurses, the doctors, the Gardaí, and all those people who depend on wages every month.
Thank you, Willie. David Fitzgerald, there was some strong accusations made against Fine Gael there.
The only way you can get the allowances back is by ensuring that we have money in the kitty to do that with, and that's this campaign. Through all the debates, all the candidates have talked all a real negative. It's all about the negative elements and trying to bash government. What we're about is actually trying to get the public finances in order so that the public can then benefit from the public finances and get allowances returned. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a recovery. Now, all the candidates have accepted that there is a recovery on. Their point they're trying to make is that it has started in Dublin and that it is in the process of being delivered in the Carlow Kilkenny. And the key is to get prosperity back in their pockets. The key from here on in is to ensure that all your listeners start to feel that in their pockets, and it starts to become reality.
David,
one voice, David first, then Conor McLean.
Okay, listen to this. Austerity is one of the most ineffective forms of economic recovery, okay? In 2012, October 2012, the IMF's chief economist, Oliver Blanchard, admitted this. He said, true tax hikes and spending cuts, they have caused far more economic damage than expert had. So now, the reason we are seeing a recovery is because you have stopped implementing extreme austerity measures. So it just goes to prove my point. Austerity never worked. It created, this is not a household. This is
every household has to live within its
This is
means,
not a
and
household,
this
this is a
country is
nation,
no
okay?
different.
You went the wrong way about that. You need to put your hands up and admit that.
Thank you,
We
Adrian.
need to
One
restructure the
voice, Conor
economy.
McLean, please.
The country is actually in a primary surplus, so that means that it's debt which is causing the problem. The €8 billion that is being paid out on debt that we did not incur. 1/3 of that is still from the banking
We as a
debt.
country did.
We didn't.
You and I.
The country,
did.
no, we didn't. It wasn't our debt. It was the debt of bankers, developers, and speculators, and it was put on the shoulders of the state by their representatives of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, continued it, and Labour and the Greens obviously participated.
Bobby
in that.
Edwards, you might like to answer that?
Yeah, well, what I think is there's too much emphasis. I've been knocking on doors with the last 8-9 weeks, I suppose most people here. There's too much emphasis on what happened in the past. Of course, I'm talking about the past.
Well,
When we
look, are you
future,
surprised we're still feeling
yeah,
it?
when we look to the future, it's now
You
for
voted
the
for the
future.
bailout, you voted for the bank.
I asked Davy
Bobby
Fitzgerald Fitzgerald one question. Why in the last 4 years has the divide between those that have and those that have not widened? Because they're a right-wing party. I had the microphone.
A short answer from David, and then we're going
I
to
want to
a
ask the
commercial
question
break.
first. Why has the divide between those that have and those that have not?
The
Why is the rich have more?
You've asked the question, David,
Why is the rich have more? Why
The
does
reason is very simple. The wealth of the nation was destroyed by Fianna Fáil, and only a small number have survived this. So under Fianna Fáil, you saw people destroyed, including people on low incomes. And Fianna Fáil seemed to fail to take responsibility for the role they played, and Bobby Edwards himself, in terms of his own voting record for budgets, for bailouts, for the lot.
Sure, no, it is an important election.
John, David didn't answer the question I asked him. David didn't answer the question.
You're very concerned about winning this seat,
KCLR Live.
and you're very welcome back on phone to say there's been no employment in Castlecomer since 4 factories closed. Not one job has been created. Billy lives in Castlecomer, watched the debate on TV last night. Judging by that, as a discussion this morning, you wouldn't give any of you a vote. Well, you have to vote for one of them, and the crucial thing is get out there and vote. Kathleen deals with the elderly and says the present government took away the death grant along with increasing prescription charges and cut the electricity units. And if that wasn't bad enough, they brought in a property tax they have to pay for out of their pensions now. All this talk about bailing out the banks to ensure that the money was used to pay guardian nurses, etc., but aren't politicians paid out of the same purse? Yep. Mary Ann was out around, and one of the things she did was she put questions to ask people what question they would like to put to the politicians. Do you remember we play another one of those now?
If the candidates were to come to you, would there be one question you'd put to them, or any question at all you'd ask them?
Just keep your promises when you get in. You know, when you come to the door, promise them. Why not keep it? Okay?
Malcolm Noonan, are you going to keep your promises?
Yes, absolutely. I've kept my
And what are
promises
they?
in 11 years of electoral politics and prior to that. My promises are to work as a diligent, hard-working, honest politician, and to represent people and to ensure that there's a participative means in which we bring about legislation, and that people are included, and it's not just powerful lobby groups or vested interests that are included in the decision-making process.
Willie Quinn, how would you feel about your promises?
Vincent, I don't make promises. I'm a councillor for the last 8 years down in South Carlow, and I haven't made promises to anyone, but I deliver on what I do. And people come to me and ask me to do something, I deliver that. I don't have to make promises to do that, it's just done by hard work.
Breeding, your first term councillor, have you had opportunity to make promises and deliver on them?
Well, pre-election, certainly, John, I wouldn't be making promises that I couldn't fulfil. I'm actually telling people on the doorstep that are asking, please contact me 3 times, because I am the only independent here in Kilkenny and the first independent, I believe, elected as well. And I am saying to people, I do need help. If people want more help, I need to be elected into the Dáil. And that is, I'm just being honest about it. There was one thing I wanted to say with regard to solutions to different jobs, and this is what I just want to share: flexible social welfare, just to incentivise workers to take on temporary seasonal work. It's crazy that some people feel they're better off on the dole. And I had my hand up there, John, I really wanted to get in before the break. And make childcare tax deductible, making it easier for parents to return to work. And a national reconstruction bank as well, as promised by the current government. And mandated to lend to viable businesses, something that our banks at the moment seem reluctant to help out on businesses.
Thank you, Brady. You've been good. Dave Fitzgerald, a texter in. Do you agree that Michael Noonan that some people are allergic to work?
Michael Noonan made those comments in the context that he said that he wanted that it's government priority to ensure that everybody who wants a job can get a job, everybody who wants to get retrained can get retrained, everybody who wants to be reskilled can get the opportunity. So the priority of government is to ensure that everybody can get back into the workforce and get away from the poverty traps that long-term social welfare dependency creates, and that's the priority of this government.
No, what you want?
Well, I think I've made no promises to anybody, because I'm not going to promise something that I can deliver, unlike Fine Gael, Labour and Fianna Fáil. The second thing I'd say is that Michael Noonan was wrong to make the statement that he made. Was it not him that made the bags of the hepatitis C back in '92 and then lost his power?
Adrian Wallace?
I think, to be honest, that that Noonan made those comments to deflect from the huge controversy that is site serve at this moment in time. And I'd like to now, after break, to actually get into the corruption that is going on with this government and with the past government.
And Bobby Aylward, and then I think you have some text to read.
Yes, I think Michael Noonan's remark was a scandalous remark. I think it's an insult to anyone that's out there on social welfare at the moment looking for a job. For a Minister for Finance to come along and say to pass such a remark, I think it looks bad on his thinking and on the thinking of the government. They're forgetting about people who need sympathy and who need jobs and focus on jobs. So they're removed from reality by saying a remark that there's people allergic to employment.
Thank you, Bobby. And the texts have been streaming in on 083 306 96916. Where will you pick out a sample of them before we go to Sinead with the news?
A lot of pensioners have had their landline phones taken out, according to a texter, which was creating jobs because they've no help at all with their bills. Good morning. A listener says a very lively debate. I just want to say Joan Burton keeps saying that we didn't touch the social welfare. If that's the case, why are we cut back 40 to 50 euro a week in some cases? It's still cutbacks, whatever way you look at it. Cutbacks, another listener says, my backside, there was no attempt to cut off pensions who destroyed the country. We had it on the news during the week, 2 former Taoiseach drawing down pensions worth 80 grand each. There was no super tax imposed on them. This Sharon government won't do it because they know they might be voted out, and the gravy train keeps rolling on. Another person said that they're embarrassed for all in Carlow and Kilkenny listening to this. That was Luke. And somebody says no possible water charges until leaks are repaired. That's the sensible way forward for all. I think it's time that we took a quick commercial break.
And that's it. We'll be back with you shortly, and we will be talking about water charges, and we'll be talking about jobs, and we'll be talking about all sorts of things like that. We've had regulations that's gone too far, they're not giving us jobs. Please ask the panel. That's something we might come to. John in Hugginsdown wants to ask David Fitzgerald what he would do for suckler farmers. Suckler scheme brought in by his colleagues is unworkable. We'll come to that. Please ask the main party candidates what they would do to attract more investment to keep graduates in Carlow and Kilkenny. This is from a recent graduate who would like to stay at home, but there is nothing for her. Please ask Bobby Aylward if he thinks his brother should have paid pensions. Well, Bobby's here. He's not his brother's keeper. His brother is his brother. Bobby is Bobby. John says there's no housing and no work in the Clock area of Castlecomer. Mary lives in Lochboy and wants to know how much of our taxes go to the government. With big salaries and big pensions, there is disillusionment and there is scepticism. You have more text there, have you?
Yes, at a time when shops are closing all over Kilkenny City due to high rates of charges by the hospitality area. Why do they get reduced rates? Rates are charged on their turnover. However, this doesn't apply to shops. Texter wants to know who will stop poisoning water with fluoride. We have many who accept paying for clean, healthy water, but my dog won't drink unfiltered water. Somebody who lives in Graignamanagh says they're a pensioner and this town is like a ghost town. All the businesses are closed, there's no jobs available. Thanks, Donal. Castlecomer has a drug problem. A texter says associated antisocial behaviour as well because of a lack of employment. Do any of your candidates have suggestions on how they can alleviate these problems?
That sucker scheme, David Fitzgerald, what is that and do you think it is working?
Well, firstly, I was with Simon Coveney yesterday, spent the day with them, and there has been a huge investment in towns by the department only announced yesterday. 350 million being put out to support farmers. There's also some incentives for the arable sector. But Simon Coveney was very clear on the importance of creating a farmers' charter, which will do two things. One is it will reduce the amount of paperwork, and secondly, it will deal with the issue of inspections, which is a sore issue for many farmers, so that farmers have a minimum rights in relation to notice for inspections, and that the manner in which they engage with the department respects their right to farm and farm properly.
Bobby, that's sucker scheme?
The sucker scheme, that's very important and needs to be rolled out immediately. You know, the finances for that. This is very important. Beef and growth of beef. We under Harvest 2020 set targets of increasing beef output by 40%. And if you don't support the sucker beef scheme and this dynamic scheme that's been rolled out now, you will not have farmers in the produce of beef, because you have to maintain the suckler herd to have beef coming through. And as I said, the 40% increase is slow and there's problems with it. And I'm asking the Minister and James Fitzgerald to make sure the Minister rolls out this. There's red tape and there's too much restrictions on all these schemes when they're brought in.
Well, that's 56 million beef genomics scheme, which is a huge investment by a decoupled payment to farmers, and that's going to be hugely important to protect the suckler herd and to grow the quality of beef that we need in this country.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, David. As I said, Marianne Vaughan is out around the constituency, and she asked people what question they would like to put to our candidates.
There's so many questions, I don't know. Well, like, why don't they have more jobs here in Ireland? Why are they exporting all their brains and everything else? Why can't they keep them here in Ireland and pay them the money? You know, I mean, they're bringing in foreigners in here to do the job.
Peter O'Loughlin, I'm sure you have views on that.
Yeah, well, what she says is entirely true. We have very high levels of immigration. We also have very high levels of immigration. There's no need really to get into detailed economic arguments. I mean, the simple fact that we have so many people moving out, while we have so many people moving in, is absolutely ridiculous. Allowing that, but again, to go back to my original point about what I was talking about the domestic economy and building the primary economy up, it is very important for wealth creation, but the wealth we have is already either leaving this country or not being spent on Irish people.
But you're advocating things like leaving the EU. I mean, that's not the real word.
No, I'm sorry, but it is actually partly the real world. While many people may be in a bubble in politics in Ireland, anybody who knows anything about European politics is well aware of the monstrous difficulties.
You want to go back to the punt. You want to get out of the euro.
Yes, and the reason why we want to do that is because the euro is failing. The euro is failing. It was failing since its inception because it's not built on a solid foundation. It's a political tool used to try and help soothe the European superstate. It has no economic foundation. It has to fail because the economies within the eurozone are too different to common currency, and it's already failing at the moment, which is not great. And it's Italy, France, all these countries are next in line. They're next to us. It's only a matter of time.
Noel, then Patrick, then Elizabeth. Noel?
Well, I have 3 children living abroad because they couldn't get jobs in this country. And they're not a burden to the taxpayer because they're not here drawing dough. And that suits the government, and that's what the problem is. You're not dealing with the nitty-gritty. As far as this government is concerned...
So you're saying the unemployment figures are not the genuine unemployment?
They're not genuine figures at all. They're manipulated figures. They know it and we know it. It's just that they think they can con the Irish people.
But the other side of it is the tax take is up, more people are working.
I don't believe that either.
That's a fallacy.
Hold on. When you think, look at it this way. You take a guy that's on €188 a week. This government, under particularly John Burton as Minister for the Department of Social Welfare, decided in her wisdom that she'd give them an extra €20 a week. So if you break that down to a 40-hour week, that's $3.45 an hour, which is slave labour. And that's to take so many people off the dole. The second thing I'd say is
It's getting people to start. I mean, job bridge.
that's not how. That's you don't.
That's an insult.
The other thing that I was going to say was, there's I don't know how many people in this country under 21, and they're now getting €100 a week in terms of cutbacks. And this is what Labour said, that there was no cutbacks to the core payment.
We'll come back to Patrick, but Catherine, you're quite agitation to get in there.
Just in relation to job bridge, and that scheme is a complete farce, and something that we were looking to replace with expand on the Jobs Plus scheme that was there before.
Why is job bridge a farce?
No,
I find this.
I'll tell you why it's a
Well, I
farce.
find it fascinating
because-
because I know a lot of people who have done job bridge and not done.
Well, I think you must be one of the only people, because I don't know anybody that has done job bridge and have gone on to permanent employment. That's the big issue with it, and it's literally like slave labour for the time that they're in there. So what we need to do in relation to jobs is look at, there's lots of different sectors. There's the rural areas and agriculture. That's one area. Look at our small and medium businesses. 70% of people that work in this country are employed by small and medium businesses. We need to assist them in terms of upward only rents, the rates,
That's small and medium enterprises.
Yeah,
You find yourself in a good
I think it's very important. Immigration is
Hold it there, please.
a divisive issue. It's an important issue. This government and the current government are overseeing a system of prison camps in this country. They're essentially locking up immigrants for significant periods of time. It's a human rights abuse, a human rights issue, and it needs to be addressed.
That's absolutely not
We have
wrong.
exploited schemes here that are massaging the jobless figures in the south and across the country. That's reality. And if we want to
Well, you're using the
create,
word massaging. What do you mean by massage?
well, I mean, essentially they're forcing individuals onto schemes with very low pay, and the figures are coming down. That's the reality. What Renew Ireland wants to do is to build a sustainable recovery based on indigenous industry and SMEs. Now, I visited Walsh's distillery in Carlow, establishing the first whisky distillery for over 200 years in the southeast.
And we
It
will
has
talk
significant
about
influence in
water.
Irish water.
Yeah.
Now, the government is doing nothing for indigenous industry. It's focusing on multinationals, investment from overseas. What we need to do is support our own, support Irish business, and that's how you build a sustainable recovery. The government is not doing that here in Carlow.
I can't.
Thank you, Patrick. I'll go to Elizabeth Harahan for the National
Patrick, you're
Citizens.
talking about human rights there. I think housing is a human rights issue, and
I agree.
I'll refer again, one of your sitting TDs now in the Dáil at the moment stated that we make it homeless. So I mean, that's your answer to human rights. Or we make it illegal for people to be made homeless. That's exactly what the
You're
lieutenant said.
misrepresenting what
No,
he
he
said.
didn't. No, he
He's
didn't.
a hard
That's
worker for the
exactly what he
people of
said.
Carlow.
No, that's what he said.
That you're misrepresenting
Look,
what he
this
said.
Ireland is one of the most wealthiest countries in Europe. We could be the Saudi Arabia of Europe if we looked after our
If
oil,
we had oil.
and our gas, and we weren't selling it off. Not actually selling, we're giving it all away. We should have a 60% contribution tax on natural the oil. Since 1970, since we joined the European Union, we had a fishing industry worth €201 billion. The Irish economy got €17 billion out of it.
Thank you,
The
Elizabeth.
European-
Malcolm has the floor for
Yeah, just the figures. If you go back to the context of what Minister Noonan had said to Kenny last week, he said not just are they allergic to work, he said that we're not including those in the statistics. So by his logic, if we include people who don't obey the law, do we not include those in the statistics, or people who don't pay taxes? So this goes back to the point of massaging the figures. There's a net emigration out of this country of 70,000 people. Peter's party is an anti-immigration party. They don't want a celebration.
Completely wrong. We're not an anti-immigration party.
Well, I
We're
looked at your
anti-mass
website,
immigration.
Peter, and some of the things actually turn my stomach.
Well, tell me what turns your stomach, Malcolm. Off you go.
Refusing to celebrate other cultures in this country.
We did not say we refuse to celebrate other cultures. What we said was we do not stand by demand. We have zero tolerance policy towards demands to alter our national culture. That's what we have.
There are no demands to alter our national culture.
Excuse me. Well, recently Dr. Ali Salim came out with a book, and that book was about the Irish education system. And what he was talking about was segregation within our education system. He was talking about the separation of boys from girls, the separation in PE. This is the kind of book that's coming out in Ireland. But not only that, we've seen that these kind of things have been happening on the European continent. We cannot allow those things to happen in Ireland.
I'm sorry, thank you, Peter. I'm going to come to Conor, then Breda, then
I just need to
Davy.
finish the point on
Finish
on-
briefly,
on-
Malcolm.
I think that there are points being made about supporting SMEs. There are some measures around changing public procurement, about actually tangibly supporting local economic resilience, community support for agriculture rather than the big, massive agri-industrial models that we promoted. And also, one thing that we're promoting is that local authorities have the power and the ability to public banks and management.
Okay. That's doing very well, isn't it? It's going all right now, yeah. Marty is gone. Oh, he is, yeah, he left after the first. Marty. Only for the small. Oh, fuck, I lost it. I had a third one. That's right there.
There are fewer dogs are fewer in the economy now than they were in 2006. So where is the recovery in regards to jobs? Where that's the case? Most of the jobs now are part-time and low pay and fixed term contracts, or else merely flexi hours and so on. As we saw with the world strike, recently.
Look, can I just say that one government agency stands out above all the others for successfully creating jobs in the community, and that's the LEADER projects. It's free from bureaucracy and political interference. I would place the local employment offices under the management of LEADER. That's all I want to say.
Yes, I agree 100%. Leader was a very success story in our time when we were in government. We had Leader and we supported Leader, and Leader was independent of everyone else, and they brought jobs into the small villages and towns in every county in this country. And what this government did, the last government or this government did, was they reduced Leader funding down to 37% of funding per job, where we want to bring that back up to 50% again. And that's the way you get investment. We had a caller there speaking about my own parish of Ballahale, where there's not a shop left, there's not a post office and not a gas station there. There's also 3 small SME businesses out of that parish. That's the devastation, and that's rural decline and rural stagnation, and we need to change that, and that's what I want to draw there to fight to change that.
David Hoolan and then Patrick McKee.
Just speaking of cultural identity, they do not allow nativity plays over the schools now for fear of upsetting the people who have come to the country. They do not allow the nativity plays.
That's not true.
It is true.
Simply not true.
It's hard to jobs.
It is true.
It's hard to listen to Fine Gael talking about jobs, and we already have public sector workers who are relying on supplementary welfare payments to get them from day to day. It's an absolute disgrace.
Sorry, what public sector workers
This is
do we
coming from a
have?
We have
right-wing
public
party.
sector who are on
You were on the left wing a month ago,
Sorry,
now you're on the
David,
right
I'm
wing.
not getting into ideological debate with you, but the people want to debate the real issues, and I'm going to debate them.
You're not.
The reality is we have members of the public sector.
You were misleading the listeners. And
I'm not misleading anyone.
You are
David.
misleading the listeners.
You
and
are
know you're misleading the
a
listeners.
member of a party that's overseeing the decline of rural Ireland with a slash and burn policy.
you're
You're
always
essentially
in the
closing down Carlow Town with your discriminatory tax policy. And you're not going to fool the voters.
The Brown
saying
site
this
was
type
sold
of-
in the last 10 days.
Renew Ireland is the only party that wants to see a significant transfer of wealth to the
Renew
squeeze
Ireland
and the low paid.
But
Paddy,
The
you're
only
actually
party-
talking about
in a
substance
position-
here, okay?
we will be
That's
the only
what to tell us.
we'll be the only party in a position to do it in the next government.
No,
That's
you're
the
wrong.
reality.
Yes, we will
restructure it.
in relation to the
Bring it in there.
job, just really briefly, just in relation, we're talking about the issue of workers and job bridge, and another major issue is 0-hour contracts. We need to ban 0-hour contracts. It's disgraceful that they're actually, that they're allowed and that they're here in this day and age. The workers' rights issues in this whole state is appalling. We still don't have trade union recognition. We have the Labour Party in government, we still don't have trade union recognition. 0-hour contracts, a major issue for loads of people in Carlow Kilkenny, and it's easy to introduce legislation to ban 0-hour contracts. I would ask that the government representatives here would immediately do that.
Adrian Wallace.
Just 2 things now. I spoke about job creation last night in Vincent Brown. I would encourage our listeners to have a look at that and see that. So there, address that issue. Now, I want to get on briefly, so I want to get on to the corruption, okay? Huge issues here regarding site serve. Catherine Murphy has pulled this out time and time again, but we also have Bobby Aylward, who was presided in TD a few years ago. Now, Bobby, you had a few documents, you got a few letters from the Oireachtas department. 3 times they wrote to you about overstay claims. One of these nights that you were trying to claim for, you were actually in Brussels. Now, this came out in 2011. So this is what we're saying here, and you also have the Lost to Sea scheme. Do you remember this, Bobby? There was a huge scandal over this. What we're saying, we're the radical left, okay? Because it comes from the Latin word radix, okay? One second, all right? So we're looking at the root of the issue. We have isolated a few people, given them a lot of power, and this we've seen corruption and cronyism, okay? This is what we need to change.
Adrian, I'm going to stop you now. Corruption is a very harsh word, and I think immediately Bobby has to have a chance to respond to that.
This is a serious allegation against me.
It's actually a fact, Bobby. The documents are on there.
Adrian, you've made your point. Let Bobby respond.
This is a serious
It's
allegation that I through expenses for some reason untold. That's totally nonsense. You have to get me the floor for it. I was never brought into an office above in Dublin once or twice, or never brought in and asked to know about this claim.
So did you receive letters from their office?
I never got nothing.
You never received letters? I have seen the letters. I have seen it. They're actually on the internet.
John, this has to be withdrawn. I never got a letter from anyone in Masterson in my life. I never got a letter from Masterson. I withdraw. Never in my life did I get a letter. And they're also saying, John, that I have a pension. That's being said as well. This is what's going on in politics at the moment. I have no pension. I never got a pension. I never received a pension. I never received a pension. Never got a pension.
You did get a 90,000 severance. Sorry.
Hold on. There's a remark again.
It is more important at the moment that an accusation is dealt with, and I want that for all sorts of reasons to be dealt with clearly.
I want it withdrawn. And David Fitzgerald has made another allegation that I got 90,000 severance pay. That's totally lies.
Did you get a severance?
I got a severance pay, but as long as 90,000, sorry, I got the same as every Fine Gael TD got beaten as well, and you have TDs.
Well, actually, David, just
I tell you what I got is 190.
Do all TDs get severance pay, and do they repay it?
I don't know. Most people, to my knowledge, most people when they leave public life, they don't return.
I got a severance pay 190 what David Fitzgerald said. That's what I got. And talk about this hype. I got 90,000 of a severance.
Okay. Bobby, are you satisfied that you've had an opportunity to answer that accusation fully?
I want to withdraw. I want the allegation withdrawn.
Well, she has taken leave from the room at the moment because it was kind of difficult to run the debate, but that is between you and her. But from a KCLR point of view, I think you've been given ample opportunity to refute.
Thank you, John. And I also want David Fitzgerald to withdraw that I got 90,000 of a severance pay.
No, I asked you, did you get 90,000?
Well, I want to clarify it.
So
I got the same severance pay as some of your TDs were beaten in 2011.
So do you want to give us the figure, Bobby, and get it put to bed forever?
I told you 190 of what?
So approximately 10,000.
Yes, after tax.
10,000 euro. Elizabeth Harriman, you've been waiting to get in.
Can I get in there, John? You were in a position going back in 1999 or 2000, right? In relation to the Lost to Sea scheme, you were the chair of the actual party whip of that agricultural committee, and there was a lady came to actually you overrode, you destroyed democracy that day as far as I'm concerned, because Emily Riley put forward a package that approved a 245,000 euros to a woman where she had lost her husband and lost her 16-year-old son. Now she had fought against Fianna Fáil government for nearly 20 years for that package. She went to the office of the Ombudsman, they overruled the government's decision, it went before you, and you stated that she was not entitled to get it. Your actual words were that it's the party's way, it's the party whip, it's democracy at its best. Now you have no idea, you could have used your discretion that day. That woman had 6 children, so I would hate this day and age to be in the same position, to be coming along to you and asking you to help me in a position, because what would you do, Bobby? You'd go with the party whip, like you have always done. You're a backbencher and you have no vote.
John, can I answer that, John? John, I wasn't chairman of the committee, I was whip on the committee. I was chairman, I was the whip of the committee. That's the
Very briefly,
that was democracy at its best. There was a problem. It was brought before the agricultural committee, which I was whip of. It was debated for 4 or 5 weeks. That everyone was brought in, every concerned party was brought in front of that party, with all parties with all. Sorry, can I answer now? With all parties represented, and the decision was made that the decision by the committee was that everything was done according to law and according to democracy.
I have to go to a break. Can you kill the mics, Pat, because I'm going to go to a break. Rita says Rita Gardner's not a good candidate. She needs to get her facts right. Michael Noonan did not not say everyone is allergic to work. He said there are some people who are allergic to work, or he just says we all.
Weekday mornings from 10 till 12. This is KCLR Live.
And you're very, very welcome back. And this time next week you should be planning, or you may already have voted, and we will be, KCLR will be involved with the results program on the following day, and there'll be a lot of interest in that. Before we go to tax Emer, Willie, when you want to respond very briefly to some things that were said before
Yeah,
the
I'm
break.
just saying, John, regarding the rates of pay. I mean, back in Celtic Tiger years, there were students leaving college and were given jobs at 1,000 and 1,200 a week. I mean, that was crazy money for young people, and like I said, that's why a lot of them have lost track of. I mean, I've worked all my life in the construction industry. I couldn't get people to work for less than 140 hours a day. I mean, that was crazy money, like, and it's very hard for people, and that's why the cost of construction work went up through the roof. The other thing that I will say there regarding the amount of money that has been spent in Carlow Kilkenny from 2011 to 2014, 130 million has been spent between the Scotia Post and housing and the schools. That's a big investment for just Carlow Kilkenny, a serious investment, and that's local jobs for local people.
Why is it crazy that a young person earning a certain amount? I agree with you on your point that maybe people were earning too high wage, but why a young person? I mean, what's the age bracket where you can start to earn a certain amount of money? I mean, like even what the government did with cutting the under 25 down to 100. I mean, they've cut nobody from at 188 to 100. That's almost 50% of a decrease in income. But it's just because they're under 25, suddenly it's a case of actually will hit them. They don't care.
I'd just like to say this. Back when I served my time, I served in the shop in the bar hardware and grocery in 1971, right? I was getting £1 a week, £1 a week.
You don't need to tell me. I've worked a lot of minimum wage jobs.
60 hours a week.
I worked as a barman, I worked as a cashier, I worked as a deli worker, I worked in a beer garden in Germany. I've worked a lot of minimum wage jobs. I know it's great to be on minimum wage.
It's great to see the apprenticeships come back in this country again, because I think that's
okay.
That's
We're
major investment.
getting sidetracked from the issue, which is which of these people you're going to vote for this day next week. Emer, some texts are coming in, and then we're going to talk about water.
Mary wants to know, when will Kilkenny Borough Council and Carlow County Council provide play equipment and playgrounds for children with disabilities like wheelchair swings and crawling tunnels? John, we're hearing the same story over and over. There'll just be one TD, so they can do nothing for us. Listening to your show, says a texter, and all the candidates arguing about job creation and the unemployed. So how come every government in recent times has treated self-employed people as the lowest of the low? We pay our taxes, and as soon as someone hits hard times, they can't get any help from social welfare. It's been this way for years. John, they should all be put on a boat off the coast of Donegal. All the local TDs, they're sucking money out of the poor, and it's a disgrace. And lots more coming in about job seekers. Texter says, I have 2 children, one on the way, I'm on job seekers. It was cut to under €30 a week. My wife has a decent job. Our backs are not against the wall, they're behind the wall pushing back, we're struggling, and which one of them with you there can help me and my family?
People out there are definitely struggling. When taxation was mentioned, 2 people with their hands up instantly are Patrick McKee and David Fitzgerald. So before we go on to water, give each of you an opportunity to say what you wanted to say.
First, in relation to the self-employed, there has been a new policy. Self-employed people, if they lost their business, couldn't claim social welfare up to recently. That has been changed, and that was a discrimination against people who were self-employed. Secondly, Michael Noonan has clearly said people are going to get a tax cut. There are too many families who are paying too much tax. It's my view that people in this country, in this constituency, are overtaxed, and the key from here on in is to start to reduce those taxes, while at the same time also making money available for public services.
People have lost the SME sector and self-employed have lost absolute confidence in this government and all the established parties. Ensuring that we end the tax discrimination that's been presided over by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour when it comes to the self-employed is a red line issue for Renew Ireland. By electing a Renew Ireland TD, that will be addressed, and that will also stimulate rural Ireland and support family businesses, shopkeepers, mechanics, all workers in rural Ireland. So if the government want to do something positive for rural Ireland, they'll end the tax discrimination. It will also support job creation in our towns and villages, rather than the slash and burn policies of Fine Gael and Labour. They're meaningful policies, David.
Fianna Fáil are running a policy. I agree that self-employed, especially SME self-employed, have been discriminated in this country. If you are employing 50, 30 or 40 people and your business goes bust, the 30 or 40 people who are paying for you, get social welfare. But the person that is implying gets nothing, and the whole business is gone. So we're proposing to change this.
You're not changing.
Hold on, hey,
We
don't,
changed-
sorry David,
we
sorry David,
changed
don't
it.
answer,
You
sorry
never
David,
changed it.
sorry David,
You
don't
were
answer for me.
you were in
Sorry,
government for
sorry
15
David,
years and you
sorry
never
David,
changed it.
don't
We
answer,
just changed it.
don't answer,
And now you're trying to
don't,
take credit for it.
don't
The fact
answer, don't
that
answer for
Fine
me,
Gael and
David.
Labour
I'm
changed
talking
it.
about Fianna Fáil policy, I don't want to talk about
Well, it's
Fine Gael
already
policy.
changed,
You talk about
Bobby,
Fine
it's
Gael.
changed because...
Fianna Fáil, Fianna
You talk-
Gael.
Just
sorry,
David and Bobby
Okay,
to step
David and
outside
Bobby,
for a few minutes.
we need to step back from the. Actually, can you hold them, because I want to do a question to everybody straight away. So,
hold
we
hands.
want to move on to water, and what we want to do is we can talk about water from now.
No, we all got kicked out, they should go too.
He went outside the door and he came back.
Everybody else was put out, they should go out.
Absolutely.
And here we have just seen people's power at work.
Exactly.
We have just seen people's power
Keep the big
at
parties out.
work. Let's get serious again, please. We want to talk about water. David, can you hold it for a minute? We want to talk about water, and what we need to know, I want to know forever, because we can talk about water forever. In one sentence from each person, if you went to the door and people want to know what is your position on water, and I'm going to go like we did around at the beginning of the programme, around the table, Malcolm Noonan, what would you say to people?
The Green Party supports a fair and equitable metered water charge based on free allowance and allocation based on families' need. Secondly, we do not and never did advocate the establishment of Irish Water. We would have favoured that the water service provision remain in local authority ownership.
Okay, one
And
sentence,
and a
DJ
referendum
Wallace.
on the resource that is.
Irish Water was never, Irish Water,
Adrian Wallace.
Irish
Well,
Water,
come to you, David.
Irish Water was never set up to aid the development of the water system. It was set up as another enterprise and they expected us to be the gullible customers.
No, G. Walsh?
Abolish Irish Water and all the cronies that go with it.
I received a
Catherine
water
Function,
bill
please.
and I tore up my water bill.
Madly.
Okay, I tore it up and threw it in the bin.
Fine, I was going to come to you in order, David, but you've chosen to come in ahead of that. Catherine Function?
Okay, well, we're fully opposed to the water charges. We're committed to abolishing them if in government. And we've set out our policy exactly how we do that about 3 weeks ago in the Dáil. But the big reality about this is that people cannot afford to pay. And just really briefly, because there was a lot of mention of struggling families on the Vox Pop and people who are
Catherine, one sentence.
Okay.
Patrick McKee?
People have lost absolute confidence in Irish Water. Renewer's position was quite clear, we want to abolish Irish Water, but we do support a charge linked to usage, which is independently verifiable, and there's a fair amount to meet families' needs. We need to invest in our water infrastructure.
One person at a time, please. Peter Lockett next.
We support spending hundreds of millions on repairing pipes and conserving water as opposed to wasting it on quangos and ridiculous inflated expenses.
Here.
We're
Rita
talking
Gardner.
politically here.
Rita Gardner.
Okay. This water charge is about.
Sorry, Rita, I didn't mean to bark at you, but
Oh,
I
no,
was going to
no, that's
cross
okay, that's
Davy.
okay, that's okay. The water charge, I think, is about a double taxation that the people can't afford, and it's not about conservation. And I also fear that the charges are the persecutor to privatisation and higher bills.
And
Elizabeth Horan.
We need to abolish Irish Water because what it's doing is draining local government of actual funds. We have 2/3 of the car tax being handed into Irish Water. We have the property tax that went in to set up Irish Water, and business rates are going to go up because business rates fund local government.
Yeah, I agree with the water charges for the simple reason that when we say about that we're being double taxed, the people of rural Ireland are being double taxed as well because they're paying water charges for the last 30-40 years and nobody has come out to help them in any way.
And Conor McLean finally.
We've all been paying for water through the motor tax and value-added tax for a long, long time, but water charges are inherently unfair, and a boycott is the only way of forcing all the parties to hold to any promises that they might make in relation to its abolition, and I would encourage everyone to...
You're welcome back in Time is Flying. We have all 13 candidates for the Carlow Kilkenny constituency, but there's lots of texts coming in. Bob from South Kilkenny Rank says a Fianna Fáil supporter, but he wants to ask all the candidates, including Bobby Aylward, what they propose to do about the rules and regulations that Phil Hogan brought in on builders. Both the builders and those looking to get work done in their homes are being crippled by this red tape. Woman Rank said that young people need to be given decent wage because accommodation is just so expensive. She's annoyed listening to Willie Quinn, thinking that Labour and Fine Gael know how it is for people when they really don't. Emer, you have a lot more text there.
Lots and lots of text to 0833069696. John, it's my fear very significant environmental damage was done to the River Nore last summer and autumn due to the KCAS bridge works. Will the candidates call on Kilkenny County Council and its contractor to publish all environmental reports relating to the CAS works in the river? Another texter says, can you ask the panel, how does a three-car social welfare household qualify for a new social house to be built? Somebody asks the candidates to give a comment on the opening of the brewery in Kilkenny. Would this create jobs? That's the site there. Hi John, I won't be paying any water rates. I don't have the money. I find it hard enough to survive from week to week. Somebody else says it's all about the self-employed being entitled to social welfare. The self-employed are being crippled with tax. They should be supported more. Why should unemployed people get all the incentives? There should be some sort of infrastructure set up to help the self-employed. No party seems to want to do that, thanks to Moss. Deirdre says, my husband's self-employed. We only barely are able to live on what money he gets in. It's a disgrace. We don't have the luxuries. We just seem to be paying bills all the time. We can't afford to pay our water bill.
Lots and lots of people out there. I think I'm sure you're all getting it on the doorsteps because people are finding it very hard. From talking to people, 3 issues that we wanted to get to are childcare, crime and health, because we know they've been coming up a lot into the programme. They want to ask you. We start off with childcare. Kathleen Function, I know this is an important issue for you.
Yeah, thanks John. Childcare is a major issue. The cost of childcare is crippling so many families, and that's the theme, that's the point I was trying to make earlier, that's coming up with a lot of the texts with the vox pop, how families are really struggling, they're really hard pressed. But we want to see more state investment in regards to childcare, affordable childcare for people, because the reality is it's nearly like the equivalent of a mortgage for an awful lot of people. But there's 2 parts to it. There's the childcare for the early years, and then there's also when you get to school. A lot of schools have voluntary contributions. There's the cost of the uniforms. Back to school is a time where parents dread. And the other thing as well that we need to, and it kind of links into health, is assessments for if a child might have a learning disability. There's such a cutback in that area.
With that in health. Malcolm Noonan?
Yeah, as I'm chairperson of a voluntary community-owned childcare service in Lochboy, and my wife works in the sector, so I'm well aware of the issue, many challenges that faces the sector. I think Kathleen's absolutely right. Many families find it prohibitively expensive to return to work if they do the maths and try and work out how they afford to pay for childcare. Secondly, there's a major issue in relation to ongoing professional development and training. What we would love to do in our service is to be able to have sufficient funding to train our staff, to bring them up to the next level, to treat the service not just as a childminding service, but as a very valuable contribution to early childhood development.
Rita Gardner.
Thanks, John. The parents, I think, are paying the highest childcare costs here in Europe, and I think that more investment is needed for childcare, tax breaks as well for parents, and also reform of the inspection system. It's costing childcare it's just too expensive.
Peter O'Loughlin.
Yeah, the childcare has gone. The cost of childcare has gone through the roof in this country, and I mean, in generally, I wouldn't be a huge fan of state industry, but in this instance, it should be a state. We need to remove the profit-making aspect from childcare. As a primary teacher, I know how crippling it is, especially after school care, when parents obviously can't pick up their children from because they're still working. But the profit motive has to be taken out of this, because this is about looking after children, and I mean that people profiting off that is just absolutely wrong, especially when it's crippling working families.
David Fitzgerald.
Look, I'm a parent of 4 children. I'm a member of the School Parents Association. I know that parents in particular are under huge pressure, and I've felt that on the doorsteps, and I think the key is to try and get more money back in people's pockets to start with. But we have brought in the first year of free childcare. We're working on trying to make the second year free also, so that parents can actually get a decent start. And that's all down again to economic and the numbers adding up and the prosperity.
Conor McLean.
We need a programme of building childcare facilities right around the country which are state funded. Tax credits won't cut it. Social Justice Ireland published a study where it shows that multiples of the minimum wage would be needed, particularly for young parents, to be able to afford to pay for childcare and to be able to go out and work at the same time.
If you pull the mic across there, Bobby Aylward, please.
Yes, child benefit is €5 still less per month under this government, and maternity benefits for the first time has been taxed. That's a non-incentive for children. The cost of childcare is massive. It goes anything from 11 to €1,500 per month for young parents that are working. We have brought out an excellent document. Fianna Fáil will introduce a child care support tax credit to cover 20 to 40% costs up to the value of €2,000. We will extend maternity leave to 30 weeks. Both for father and mother, they can share for both parents. And most important, a second free preschool year for children under age to 2-3 years old. That's what we're promising.
More promises.
Well, promises is cost. It's cost.
Let's be fair. All any of you are giving us promises.
Well, nobody's talking about how it's going to be funded. I met with a childcare representative in boardroom recently. He confirmed that it's very well the party speaking about plans to develop the childcare sector, but until they put the correct funding in place, that won't happen. What we're proposing in Renew Ireland is that if the government are going to insist on taking money out of people's pockets in relation to the property tax, but they have to see the benefit on the ground. What we want to establish is a social cohesion fund to support childcare facilities, the development of community facilities, and also support those working in the sector.
Right, I'm watching the clock very carefully.
Is that not a promise from Pat as well?
This is one of these instances where it's actually quite simple to solve, because once you take the profit motive out of it, costs instantly decrease. So it's one of those few areas which can actually be easily solved, one of the few economic areas.
Thank you, Peter. Week after week on this programme, we hear about crime, and there is definitely worry in rural areas about crime. Has anyone got any concrete things that you would do if elected, which would get rid of the fear and worry? Adrian?
One very simple measure, okay? Stop arresting the water protesters, okay? One of the founding principles of this republic was our right to revolt, okay? Now our government are trying to take that away. If you just actually allocate the Gardaí where they are needed, out into the rural areas, instead of targeting people for their right to protest.
Well, are there any circumstances under which it might be appropriate to arrest someone?
If someone is being violent, I think that's fair enough, by all means, but we haven't seen that, you know what I mean? We've seen the Garda act as the state's bodyguards. That's not fair. And it's abusing the Garda on the ground. I mean, they don't want to pay the war charges either, and you're making them do a very dirty job. This needs to be addressed.
You're looking for a practical suggestion. You're looking for a practical suggestion. I'm going to give you one. I believe that we should be putting cameras on the junctions of motorway right through the motorway through Carlow Kilkenny. I think it's hugely important. Templemore has been reopened. We have 550 new Gardaí, the first time we've had new Gardaí on the streets. We have 40 new cars going into this region. So finally, because of the economic recovery, you're seeing the reinvestment in the Gardaí, which is the key to dealing with rural crime.
Please wait, Davey, I'm coming to you next. Davey Houlihan.
Heroin is a big issue in Kilkenny City, even in the villages around this county and the whole country. The people dealing in heroin, these are the scumbags that should be targeted by the Gardaí and the authorities.
Should they be targeted by the Gardaí or by the health services?
By the Gardaí and, that's a ridiculous statement, by the Gardaí and the people in authority in the country. Heroin is a big issue. Trust me on that. I've lived in the estates, in the working class neighbourhoods.
Malcolm Noonan?
It's not a ridiculous statement. Absolutely, the health services need to be part and parcel of the solution. The reality is that there's been massive cuts to drug rehabilitation programmes, to Garda youth diversion projects, and the Irish Penal Reform Trust has called for intervention programmes that stop this cycle of the revolving door prison system that can actually bring people about to transform their lives. We spoke just previously about early childhood development. There's a lot of scientific and good evidence to suggest that early intervention in good early childhood and family supports can bring about transformative change in young people's lives that will divert them from crime and reduce crime statistics overall.
Elizabeth Harlan?
Talking about children's allowance, first of all, it has to be means tested and so it's fair and equitable and actually target the money to low income families. If you're talking about crime, we seem to be forgetting that what brought this government to its knees is white collar crime, and nothing has been put in place to tackle that. You have the HSBC bank accounts that were over €3 billion worth of money was in offshore accounts, and this government has failed to chase up anything, yet they will put somebody in jail if they don't have a television licence.
Yes, and people, as you said, I've been going around in the doors, knocking on doors, and people are afraid of their homes. People, crime on property, crime on the person, crime is an issue. And the only way you're going to get crime, especially in rural Ireland, is more Gardaí. When we left office, there was 14,000 Gardaí in it. Now it's down to 12,500 plus. What Davy is proposing, that's only replacing what with the Gardaí that are retiring. We're talking going back to 500. Don't get me put out again. Don't put me out again. You got me put out the last time because you crossed me. So please let me finish. We're saying it's 500 Gardaí per annum until you get back up to the 14,000, and stop closing Garda stations in rural Ireland. Minister Shatter actually made it a policy to close Garda stations. The first time it was ever done in Ireland.
Yeah, and as David said, like, this is the first time in 5 years that we have more Gardaí in Templemore, and the previous government did close down Templemore, but this is going to continue over the next 5 years if this government is re-elected. And like I said, rural crime is serious. The motorway is good, but it brings a lot of trouble with itself as well, because people are coming down from other parts of Ireland and they get up and back within 50-60 minutes. So
Patrick McKee, 2 sentences as we're going under time.
Well, as chairman of the Joint Police Committee in Kilkenny, I know very well the difficulties facing rural Ireland and our towns and villages. There's been huge cuts to the security services over the last number of years. Renew Ireland is the only party that's going to get tough on crime. The prisoners serve their sentences that they're given, and we will ensure.
Is KCLR Live.
And you're very, very welcome back to the final few minutes of this programme. Now, we have 2 important referenda which people will be voting upon this day next week as well. The first, marriage may be contracted in accordance with law by 2 persons without distinction as to their sex, which I will refer to as the marriage referendum. And second one, every citizen who has reached the age of 21 years is eligible for election to the office of president. And I'm going to talk to all our candidates very, very briefly and ask which way they recommend, which way they're going to vote on each of these issues. First of all, for the Green Party, Malcolm Noonan, on the marriage referendum and on the president referendum.
Well, the Green Party is supporting it, absolutely, a yes vote. It's about some of the people that I love being able to love each other and express that love. And I think any fears that might be there around people religious eats in relation to a yes vote won't take away that right.
And the
in relation to the presidential age, I am supporting that. That's a personal view, and it's while I think that the referendum is not really addressing issues of young people, I think that we should have had a referendum on reducing the voting age to 16.
Thank you, Malcolm. I'm going to ask everyone to be briefer just to make sure we get in everybody. For People Before Profit, Adrienne Wallace.
Yes, I am supporting gay marriage, and I think the taxi driver on the way down, Pascal, if you're listening, he put it brilliantly. He said it's not going to be doom and gloom if the yes goes. It's not going to affect anyone negatively.
And the president?
And the president, yes, I am supporting. We need to engage young people a lot more in policies because we have a lot more to say. We have fresh eyes, and that's very much needed.
For Fine Gael, David Fitzgerald.
I'll be voting yes in the gay marriage referendum, and in relation to the second referendum, initially I thought no, but I actually, having thought about it, I think I'd be very happy to see a young person on the ballot paper for president. I think young people should be involved in the political system as early as possible.
Independent candidate Noel G. Walsh.
I'm supporting both referendums, and another notion I have is, why don't we get rid of the office of president? It's costing us $345,000 a year.
We need a referendum.
That's for another day. Sinn Féin, Catherine Function.
Yes, John, I'm supporting both, voting yes, and I'm really looking forward to doing so. And I would urge people to take the chance to vote yes and to start to make our society a more equal place.
Renew a candidate, Patrick McKee.
Yeah, of course I'm supporting a yes vote in the marriage equality referendum, but Renew Ireland is the only party that's allowing its members and its representatives to make its own decision, because we believe that it's important that people can speak their mind on either side, free of fear or favour. In relation to the reducing the age, I would much prefer to see the age of voting reduced to 16. I think this is tipping the hat to young people. But
the thing that they're going to vote on is the age for president, though you will be voting.
But I will be voting
yes. You will be voting yes. Independent Republican Davy Houlihan.
Which issue?
On both issues, will you be supporting or opposing the marriage referendum?
I'll be supporting the marriage referendum.
And will you be supporting or opposing the lowering of the presidential age?
I'll be against the lowering of the presidential age. I do not believe someone is mature enough or has gained enough knowledge or whatever of life to actually have the knowledge at 21.
Thank you. Independent Identity Ireland, Peter O'Loughlin.
We're not taking a position on the marriage referendum. That's up to our members to decide which way they want to vote. On the presidential issue, I agree. Like, I'm 30, I'm not eligible to stand. I just think it's one of the biggest pointless referendum that's ever been held in this country. It's a stop to the Constitutional Convention. The Constitutional Convention put forward a series of recommendations. They picked one which just doesn't really matter that much at all, just for the sake of holding a referendum.
For Fianna Fáil, Bobby Aylward.
Yes, I'm supporting. I'm voting yes on humanitarian grounds. I think an equal society, and everyone deserves to love one another. On the second one, it doesn't come up. I haven't thought much about it, but personally, on my own personal feelings is that 21. Whoever has the presidency is the guardian of the Constitution. We're also ambassadors for Ireland who travel abroad. I think any experienced person, he or she, would be better suited to that position. Personally, and age, I don't think about it, but I'd say 21, 22, up to 30 is very young to have that role, that important role.
That's opposed. You're opposed.
Yeah, well, I haven't thought much about it. Probably opposed. So I'd say personally,
For the National Citizens Movement, Elizabeth Hurley.
And the same-sex marriage, of course, look, we need to live in a more inclusive society, but I think on the second referendum, I will be rejecting this because I think it's an absolute insult to the people of Ireland, to be quite honest. First of all, we've never had a president at 35. And number two,
I'm going to have to move on, Elizabeth. Labour, Willie Quinn.
Yes, I'm voting yes to both of them. I think that in my eyes everyone is equal in this country.
And finally, Anti-Austerity Alliance, Conor McLean.
Yes, the Anti-Austerity Alliance is campaigning emphatically for a yes vote in the marriage equality referendum, and we'll be holding a street meeting on High Street on Saturday at noon for anyone who would like to come to encourage the yes vote to come out. Also a yes.
If I read that correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone around, all of the candidates are supporting the marriage referendum, is that correct? And I think there were either 2 or 3 who were opposed or unsure about the other. I'm going to say thank you very much to all of the candidates who have taken the time to come and talk to our, I'm sure our listeners will have greatly appreciated the chance to hear what you say. The most important thing is that you go out and vote this day next week, because it is a democratic right that is very, very important to Striker. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll be back in KCLR Live on Monday morning. Thank you, Gamer and Grain.